Welcome, everyone. I'm Sarah Shuey, the founder and CEO of Happily, the largest network of freelance live and virtual event specialists in the country. So, I'm here to give you a very quick backstage tour of a virtual event. If you're new to producing virtual events, my goal is that you'll click away from this presentation with a very clear idea for how virtual and in-person event productions are both similar and different. And if you already have a few virtual event productions underneath your belt, my goal is that you'll come away with a more effective way of communicating what it is that we do, and maybe even some ideas for how to professionalize your productions. We only have 15 minutes for a crash course here, so I'm going to move very fast. And if you want to do a deeper dive, please check out happily.io/learning or feel free to reach out to me directly. I'll leave my contact info here at the bottom. The real magic of the backstage isn't in the platform. It's in the people and in the way that you mobilize those people on those platforms. This picture here is actually like the picture of like our house and from like obviously like Kamran's tech desk. So maybe, Kamran can, it was amazing actually. First of all, let me just say that like Coco had no idea what was coming at him, even though he's like an engineer at SpaceX and he like makes rockets and stuff like that. Like he was just like, what is happening? Like Kamran came with like 3 flight cases and just like, boom, pop this up.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so with my background, I've done webcasting sort of on the cheap and on the small for, I don't know, the past 15 or 20 years. And, what we did is a very simple idea, as you can imagine. I'm sure you have to solve these problems all the time at Google. Becomes very complex as, really amazing creative ideas come to play. So what we did is we actually sort of took the ideas that Sarah had been planning out through this story and turned it into sort of a technical layout of the whole thing. So, I think Sarah and I just counted, it was like 9 screens that we had to use. There was, all the screens that were recording. There were 3 different computers, multiple mobile devices, and then of course a monitor for them to see themselves as they were doing things so they could interact with everyone on the other side of the Zoom. Yeah, so, as you can see on the Zoom, there was a phone that was being used really as almost like a talk back for the Zoom audience. We were having to talk to both the Zoom audience and the webcast audience simultaneously, and there was 2 different conversations happening at the same time. The Zoom audience was a much tighter audience of friends that were involved in the making of what the public audience would see. So that phone was really used almost like a walkie-talkie in some way. And then, of course, we had a remote DJ. The DJ was not physically with us. So the DJ was spinning everything completely remote through Zoom. And then adding on the officiants and the dancers and all of these different pieces that were coordinated by Coco's cousin, Toshi, who was doing all of the live switching just on Zoom, which was its own task altogether. And then we took that through a secondary computer, which was just an input on the video mixer. And then on top of that, we had, video graphics that we would overlay to sort of add a little more dynamics because, a Zoom a dance party is really amazing. And in the case of this, we had a lot of people actually contribute their own filters and all kinds of stuff. And then we added some filters on top of that. So, all of this really culminated in a really rehearsed. We spent, I think, 12 hours the day before and another eight or so hours the day of, rehearsing all of this on top of everything that Sarah and Colin did, rehearsing the dance moves. I'm not sure if you saw, but their dance moves were like spot on, which allowed me to flip back and forth between the rehearsal footage and the live footage. And it was like clockwork. So all of these things were there. And of course we had lighting on top of this and the very fun lasers that Coco Shoe bought. So yeah, so that's the gist.
Let's start with the overall timeline of a virtual event and the different types of teams that get involved with the virtual event production. It's not much different on first glance as a real event, right? You start with the development cycle, you move into production, marketing then kicks in, launch happens, post-production's probably a little bit longer than what you're used to, and marketing continues. The teams, same teams that you would see in an event too: creative, technical, finance, production, marketing. And when you layer them onto the timeline, also at this 30,000 foot view level, it all looks pretty much the same. But when we take a closer look at the roles that we're hiring for a virtual event, you start to notice a big difference. Here you'll see the titles of roles that folks were hiring for at Happily at the same time in 2019, and now the new titles of roles in 2020. Some of them look and sound exactly the same, but the skill sets behind them and the way that you should be interviewing for these roles will be sometimes completely different. For example, a backstage manager in a real event wouldn't need to know how the recording technology works in order to get a speaker up, quote unquote, on stage. Customer service people at your registration desk now need to also know how to resolve technical issues. And there are roles that only big productions used to have, which are now being more commonly requested by smaller and medium-sized shows, like a music supervisor, for instance. This is a very specific job that can be done in a half day by a music supervisor, or it would take someone with no experience at least 10 times as long to figure out how to do it correctly. Or what about a screenwriter? Moving from 3D to 2D requires a knowledge of cinematic production to pull off your virtual event successfully. Your skills as an event producer to take your client's vision and turn it into an event that can be transformational for audiences just simply isn't going to be as good as what a screenwriter can do, because we are now producing virtual events for the 2D screen environment. I'll talk a little bit more about that in another talk about cinematic production. Also, web developers. Last year at Happily, the only people who hired our software engineers for their events were big companies like TikTok. Now we're getting organizers from education, finance, and the nonprofit sector also asking us for custom web development work for both their front end and their back end. The thing is that with virtual events, the internet is your venue, and you're going to need to have a team that can go backstage in the internet as much as they can go backstage in a regular event. Now that I mentioned the internet, let's dive deeper into the platforms. You can kind of think about the internet overall as your venue, and each one of the platforms that you utilize to activate your audience are going to be like different rooms. For virtual events, we will most commonly be activating 3 types of platforms. There's a registration platform, there's a recording platform, and there's a streaming platform. All-in-one platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Zoom, and some of these startup B2B events platforms will have limitations and different functionalities of their own. Unless there are deep, historically embedded social interactions or very unique interaction features on which your business model survives, there is no reason why you should be using platforms that cost a ton of money. You want to select the bigger, better, faster, cheaper, and simpler platforms to service you, your guests, and your VIP talent every time. Let's start with the registration platform. Naturally, this is like the lobby of your venue. The features of a registration platform will be that you can build a profile, accept or deny entry, make a point of purchase, and view or communicate with other attendees. Backstage in the registration platform, the most common roles that you'll see will be a customer service support. That's going to be your front of line. An email marketing manager, someone who writes the copy and schedules out the information that will go to all the attendees. A web developer that will set up the platform and make adjustments as needed, and an event technologist. Event technologists usually don't know how to code. Most of them haven't actually built these registration, recording, and streaming sites. However, they are familiar with the features and limitations, and they'll come pre-populated with workarounds for you. The next piece of a virtual event is your recording platform, and this is the stage. So things that happen within the recording platform is that you can record, you can add a filter, there will be in-platform camera switching and editing. Common roles for the recording part of your virtual event include a director. That person is going to tell everyone, like, okay, you go, now go, and call the cues. Also, reposition and align people as needed. A technical director who will be helping the event technologist. Sometimes the technical director is the event technologist. That will be basically coordinating between the different pieces of audio and video, lighting and streaming. Um, the backstage manager, you can have multiple of these if you have a large show, but the backstage manager is the person that rehearses and preps the speakers, and also sometimes for a smaller show they'll be advancing slides. For a larger show you'll need a separate graphics operator, an audio engineer to help each different participant of your virtual event have sound with great quality. And you may also have another person that is working with a technical director to help with cameras and video switching. All right, and then the third platform is streaming and interaction. So, streaming and interaction is kind of like the actual room that your audience sits in, and you can actually have multiple rooms simulcasting your content that you've been recording. Some of the most common features of streaming and interaction platforms are that you can view, you can broadcast, you can play, you can share, you can comment, and obviously you can also upload. Um, the common roles for streaming is going to be your IT manager. So, a technical director kind of knows all the different pieces of how everything comes together as it relates to your show. The IT manager is really a specialist in the internet and a specialist in streaming. And then there's a software engineer who can help really customize your streaming platform, as well as the interactions that happen within the streaming platform. And then lastly, within the streaming platform, you're going to have tech support and moderators. So, tech support folks are going to be helping your attendees, maybe even your presenters, troubleshoot and make sure that they can hear, they have great picture quality, and then also the moderators are there to help make sure that attendees' comments and questions are appropriately answered. So, I want to give a special note about the production office, the deep heart of the backstage. This is going to live somewhere else, and it needs to be highly secure and password protected. Let's say you get hacked on your registration platform or recording platform or streaming platform. You really need to have a secure place, like maybe it's Slack or WhatsApp or Telegram, where you can have your own separate communications with headquarters. And the likelihood that your venue vanishes out of thin air is really low in a real event, but in a virtual event, it's much higher. So it's really important that you have professionals that are helping you work through this. So now I'm going to show you clips and interviews with some of our clients and collaborators to give you a little bit more of a sense of what happens backstage.
Joy is amazing. Joy is on the Happily team. During the event, she is, in constant communication with me. If things need to change on the fly, she's just adapting and adjusting immediately, which, happens a lot in events. Before the event, she'll send me a recap. We do a tech check, a rehearsal, make sure everything's working. We test all the settings. So she'll send me a recap, very detailed, so that I can review it and confirm, or I have the opportunity to say, actually, we're going to change this thing in the run of show. And then after the event, she always offers the opportunity for me to give my feedback, what went well, what could be better for next time. We can do a debrief if there's any major issues that we really need to investigate. Even if I don't ask, Joy is going to follow up and say, hey, I realized why we had some difficulties with breakouts in the last event. It's because these people joined the Zoom and then they left the Zoom, so they didn't have an assignment to a room. So just having that extra level of insight and support, and just the detail oriented work that Joy does is it's just unmatched.
My name is Anne-Marie Pollocky-Dinkle. I'm an event manager for CMX Media and Bevy. We are the #1 education platform for community builders. The event that we had Happily help us with was CMX Global Connect. It was our largest virtual event to date. We had over 2,000 community members join us online. With DJs and a mixology class, calligraphy, and puppies. So we've never done anything like this before. We had 5 weeks to put on a 6-hour virtual event where there was a ton of learning in the entire process. And sure enough, because of you and listening to what you said, our event, like on the back end too, which what people do not see and what is not relayed to them, it just went so smoothly. They were so professional, so warm, so friendly, so happy with the team, and cannot thank Happily enough for like stepping in, giving that advice to us, and really like helping us fine tune this event from the
So
back
good
end.
luck, everyone. I hope that was a really helpful crash course session. Again, if you want to learn more, and we get into sort of more of the details of things at happily.io/learning, and we even have a virtual event accelerator that will take you from idea to execution and fabulous ROI.